2026 budget this week, promising the golden age, but he's being pressed about the future of his tariffs. The president says he is not worried about recession and thinks we'll have, quote, the greatest economy in the history of our country. President Trump's proposed $1.7 trillion budget promises more than $100 billion in cuts to non-defense federal spending. It increases spending at the border, coupled with cuts to foreign aid.
Fox's Matt Finn in Florida. The Trump administration says a migrant was mistakenly sent to a prison in El Salvador, and now Senate Democrats want to prevent that from happening again. They're calling for a vote on deportation transparency.
In the coming weeks, the Senate will take up that Democratic resolution requesting the Trump administration detail the, quote, human rights practices of El Salvador, including its treatment of inmates in the mega prison where Kilmar Abrego Garcia was briefly detained. While the resolution itself doesn't mention Abrego Garcia by name, it calls for a report of the steps taken to comply with court orders to facilitate detainees' return to the U.S. The White House claims it has no power to return Abrego Garcia and has emphasized his alleged MS-13 gang ties and accusations of domestic abuse by his wife in court documents from 2021 and 2020.
That's Fox's Chanley Painter. For the second time in 21 years, Australians have re-elected a prime minister to a second consecutive term. Labour Party leader Anthony Albanese suggesting that his centre-left party grew not by modeling itself on the Trump administration, but instead because Australians found inspiration in their own values and their own people. His main opponent, right-wing Liberal leader Peter Dutton, America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Janice Dean, Fox News senior meteorologist and host of the Janice Dean Podcast. Join me every Sunday as I focus on stories of hope and people who are truly rays of sunshine in their community and across the world. Be sure to subscribe to the Janice Dean Podcast at foxnewspodcast.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And don't forget to spread the sunshine.
America's listening to Fox News. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
This is Jason Chaffetz from the Jason in the House podcast. Join me every Monday to dive deeper into the latest political headlines and chat with remarkable guests to hear their take on American life, politics, and entertainment. And don't forget, there's always somebody doing something stupid somewhere.
Listen and follow now at foxnewspodcast.com
or wherever you download podcasts.
Must listen to podcasts from Fox News Audio.
A painstaking process is
93 WIBC Mobile News. On the level, on the go.
Laying the groundwork for midterms. I'm Jarrett Lewis. Here's what's trending this hour. Democratic Congressman Andre Carson from Indianapolis at a town hall Friday.
So Democrats are fighting back, so much so that Trump has scrambled and walked back his proposal. Why? Because we're fighting back.
Carson joined by Democratic Congresswoman Catherine Clark from Massachusetts, where they talked about recent federal employee cuts by DOJ and funding freezes. A police officer in Evansville in hot water for an incident last weekend during a celebration for fellow officers. Chris Davis reports.
Whether he was playing or being serious, the other officers took it seriously when they say Anthony Stevenson, a cop in Evansville, pulled a pistol on 3 officers following a celebration Sunday at the Fraternal Order of Police building. According to a press release from Evansville PD, he owned up to what he did in a phone call that was recorded. Stevenson turned himself in Friday on a charge of criminal recklessness. The other officers who were there say he was quite drunk.
Do you know your chances of experiencing fragility fractures, which stem from osteoporosis?
Worldwide, we have one fragility fracture occurs about every 3 seconds. And the cost to treat such fragility fractures is more than the cost of a cardiovascular infarction event, breast cancer, and a stroke combined.
Rachel Surowick, a Purdue biomedical engineering assistant professor in Indianapolis, says 1 in 2 women at a certain age are at risk of osteoporosis, while it's 1 in 5 for men. I'm Jarrett Lewis on the level, on the go, and on WIBC.com. Now the forecast from the American Standard Cooling Weather Center.
Tonight, on-off sprinkles to light showers. Showers will increase in coverage through the early morning hours, lows in the upper 40s. For tomorrow, that's where we're going to have steady rain set up across central Indiana. On Wish TV, Storm Track 8 meteorologist Ryan Morse for 93 WIBC.
As a caring adult of a 7th or 8th grader, you may see their college plans as a distant process, but in reality, it'll be here in no time. Think about it. Your child could be heading to college by the time you pay off your next car. There's a good reason for middle schoolers and you to start planning their path to college today. This message is brought to you by the Indiana Youth Institute. Indiana's 21st Century Scholarship provides eligible students with up to 4 years of paid college tuition. So here's what you need to know. It is key that we make sure every eligible child is enrolled in the program. Requirements vary dependent upon age, and early sign-up is available for 7th grade students. For more information on the 21st Century Scholarship, visit learnmoreiindiana.org/scholars. This Kids Count Minute is a message from the Indiana Youth Institute. For more parent tips, visit IYI.org.
Kids count on you.
Mother's Day's almost here. Sundown Gardens is fully stocked with high-quality annuals, trees, shrubs, decor, and more. 186th Street and Spring Mill Road, sundown.gardens.com.
Through their service, veterans have our backs. Now we should have theirs. Learn more at gotyoursix.org.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment. And this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Gun Guy Show here on 93 WIBC. We're thrilled that you're with us. You know, you just heard a story from the WIBC newsroom, and this caught my attention. And it wasn't something I necessarily planned on talking about this evening, but it really warrants some discussion because we heard a story that an Evansville police officer attended a celebration, and it turns out, I just read up on this really during the break at the top of the hour, there was a celebration at the Fraternal Order of Police headquarters, the FOP, essentially the Union for Police Officers. They had a celebration to congratulate several officers who had just finished their probationary period on the department. And so they got together to celebrate. Now, I haven't seen reported whether officers were in uniform or not, but there were obviously alcoholic beverages involved. And one officer named Anthony Stevenson, later on, after FOP closed, they were outside. They were discussing whether they were going to go to another spot or not. Some other officers who had not been at the celebration showed up because they had just worked their shift, a later shift. And they're having a discussion outside the FOP. Officer Stevenson, reportedly being highly intoxicated, quote unquote, according to the description we just heard on the news, pulled his gun as a quote-unquote joke and pointed it at other officers. That then led to him having a warrant issued for his arrest. He surrendered Friday morning and is now being charged with criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon. So this is interesting, and the reason I think it bears some discussion, there are some points of education here in terms of how Indiana law works. I'm actually a little surprised. To a very small degree surprised, they charged him with criminal recklessness because Indiana actually has a separate crime called pointing a firearm. And by the way, you hear a lot of people, whether it's on social media or on the gun-related forums, people want to pop up and they'll be responding to some video that's out there on the national news or whatnot, and they'll say, well, that's brandishing. He's brandishing a firearm. We don't have brandishing in Indiana. There's no such crime as brandishing. And as I've mentioned, I don't think recently, but over the years here on the Gun Guy Show, as I've mentioned, brandishing in some states, if you demonstrate possession of a firearm in an intimidating or threatening manner, then that's brandishing, something along those lines. It varies from state to state. Well, we don't have a crime in Indiana called brandishing, but we have pointing a firearm. And it's an interesting statute, and it's something I talk about every time I teach my Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class that I'm always pitching here on the show. In fact, we have one of those coming up a week from today at Indy Arms. Still have a few seats available, which I'm sure you'll hear about later in the show. But as I always talk about in that class, it's an interesting statute because it starts out with a number of exceptions. It starts out saying, well, this whole crime doesn't apply to you if you're, and this is an interesting application to this case, it doesn't apply to you if you're a law enforcement officer performing the official duties of your employment. Well, this officer clearly was out after work, celebrating, drinking, and was not engaged in the execution of his official duties. So that exception, in my mind, clearly doesn't apply. It also doesn't apply if you're justified in either using reasonable force in self-defense or you're justified in using reasonable force to effect a lawful citizen's arrest. And if you've ever taken my gun law class, you've heard me joke about this in the classroom. It's hard for me to ever talk about a citizen's arrest, and I'll show my age here. A whole bunch of people, I'm sure, listening, younger than me, that never saw the Gomer Pyle series, and Gomer, it was a spinoff from Mayberry, RFD, the Andy Griffith Show. But there were a couple of episodes where Gomer's talking about effecting a citizen's arrest. And whenever I talk about citizen's arrest, I always want to use my Gomer Pyle voice. You go, citizen's arrest! But Indiana has a statute that allows you to use reasonable force to effect a citizen's arrest if you have probable cause, I should say, to believe that a felony's been committed and that this particular person committed that felony. Then you can use reasonable force. And then an exception to the pointing a firearm statute, if you point your gun at someone, if you're justified in using reasonable force to effect a citizen's arrest. So that's another exception. And if you're justified in using reasonable force in self-defense, which makes sense, if you're justified in shooting someone because, for instance, deadly force is justified, then obviously you must be justified in pointing your gun. But if you don't fall into one of those exceptions, that is, you're a law enforcement officer performing the official duties of your employment, you're justified in using force in self-defense, or you're justified in using force to effect a citizen's arrest, then the crime of pointing a loaded firearm at someone is a level 6 felony, meaning you can do 6 months to 2.5 years in jail. And the fact that this officer, Officer Stevenson of EPD, Evansville Police Department, apparently did exactly that would lead me to believe that's the most likely crime for him to be accused of. Now, he's been charged with criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon, which is also a level 6 felony with the exact same penalty. But it's a little different and arguably applies as clearly as the pointing a firearm statute does. But as I talk about in my class, it's a little different because if you do something that endangers another person, in other words, you endanger another person with a substantial risk of personal injury, then that's criminal recklessness, which is typically a misdemeanor. But if you do that with a deadly weapon, and it says specifically if you use, or while armed with, is actually the language of the statute. If you commit an act that endangers another person, that is, exposes them to a substantial risk of bodily injury, and you do so while armed with a deadly weapon, then that's criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon, which goes up to a level 6 felony. So did pointing a gun at other officers endanger them? Well, arguably, or if not obviously, yes. But that's a little tougher to prove. You can say, well, I had my finger off the trigger, or I'm a trained police officer, and I would never actually fire my weapon in that circumstance, so I didn't really endanger anyone. I could easily be an expert witness in that case, come in and talk about the rules of gun safety. The 4 rules, as we talk about all the time, one of which is always keep your gun pointed in a safe direction, which is you don't have anything in front of the muzzle of your gun that you're not willing to shoot. Did he break that rule? Of course he did. If he pointed it at other officers. Biggest sin, other than pulling the trigger in a way that injures or kills someone accidentally. One of the greatest sins for a gun owner is to simply flag someone, as we call it. Some people say flash someone or sweep someone. It's all a series of terms for the same thing, which is to allow your muzzle to be pointed at another person that you have no justification for pointing your gun at. This officer clearly did that. If I were the prosecutor in that particular county, Vanderburgh County, I would have charged him with both, pointing a firearm. Because if 4 or so officers who were all present at the scene all say, yeah, he pulled his gun and he pointed it at other officers, boom, it's a loaded gun, felony. You're done. You don't have to get into the secondary discussion of how much did he actually endanger someone by pointing his gun at them. The mere pointing is the crime. And that's an important thing for gun owners to know. One of the reasons I wanted to get into that, even though it's a bit of an aside compared to what I wanted to, or at least planned on getting into on the show, because I heard this story and I said, people need to understand what the law is in this area. And that's what I tend to do here on the Gun Guy Show, is to take items out of the news or items out of politics or items that our callers want to talk about. And we always want to encourage our callers, give us a call, join the discussion, 317-239-9393, and turn that into an opportunity for, a little broader discussion, hopefully a little broader entertainment, but also some broader education. And that story out of Evansville, I thought, was an opportunity to do each of those things. You have questions or comments, give us a call. We're going to take a break here at the quarter hour. We've got a lot more to get into. Give us a call, 317-239-9393. Join the discussion, or you can join the chat feature on YouTube. You go to YouTube, search for WIBC. You'll see the Gun Guy Show right there with today's date. You can jump on there and engage the chat feature, which a lot of people do and have a lot of fun doing so, and encourage you to do that as well. But give us a call, again, 317-239-9393. We're taking a break. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Tony Katz.
Rob Gronkowski is going to be the Indy 500 Coors Light Snake Pit Grand Marshal. That's deflating. See what I did there? See what I did? Come on, that's good. I think that means he's in charge of being somebody who wears pants to model good behavior. I should broadcast from the Snake Pit. Full suit, cigar, broadcasting from the Snake Pit. Challenge accepted.
Tony Katz, mornings 6 to 9 on 93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. Our Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class, which I was just talking about, we've got one coming up a week from today, Saturday, May 10th. We've just got a few seats available. We'd love to see you there. It's 9 a.m. to 2 o'clock p.m. It's going to be at Indy Arms, located at 2550 East 55th Street, just a block off of Keystone on 55th. It starts at 9, ends about 1:30 to 2 o'clock. It's $50 for an individual, $95 for couples. It's 4.5 to 5 hours, the most important legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner. When are you justified in using your gun, pulling your gun, pointing your gun, and God forbid pulling the trigger? Those are all the things you really need to know. In fact, you have to know if you own a gun, and certainly if you carry a gun here in Indiana. You can sign up right online at tactical-firearms.com. Just click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
It's May in Indiana, and I'm betting the floors in your home would appreciate a good cleaning. Hi, this is Denny Smith, and there is no better go-to resource for cleaning those floors than Zerorez. They can handle virtually every surface in your home. Carpets, tile and grout, hardwood, laminate, stone, upholstery, rugs, even your air ducts. Before we get any closer to summer, you can get 3 rooms Zerorez-ified for just $129, and you can take $75 off air duct cleaning too. Zerorez means zero residue, and it's the water they use. They don't need soap or solvents to really clean your surfaces. No soap, no residue, no harsh chemicals, just healthy, fresh surfaces. Zerorez cleans our floors, and I'll tell you that it is simply amazing, and it works. Don't take my word for it. Just check out 4,900 plus 5-star Google reviews. Call now, mention WIBC, get 3 rooms cleaning starting at just $129 plus $75 off air duct cleaning. 317-388-5141, online at zeroresindy.com.
Turning 65, new to Medicare, or just moved? If you qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, a Humana Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan, a DSNP, may give you the extra benefits you're looking for. A D-SNP helps cover things like prescriptions and checkups, but it also helps pay for essentials too. With a Humana D-SNP, you get $225 a month for eligible groceries, rent, utilities, and more. Plus, whatever you don't spend carries over to the next month. You may even get benefits like $0 copays on routine prescriptions, plus routine dental, vision, or hearing coverage. All of this could make a difference for your health and wallet. Learn more at GetHumana.com. Humana, a more human way to healthcare. Humana is a coordinated care HMO SNP plan with a Medicare contract and a contract with the Indiana Medicaid program. Enrollment in any Humana plan depends on contract renewal. Allowance amounts cannot be combined with other benefit allowances. Limitations and restrictions may apply.
Comcast Business helps turn today's small businesses into engines of modern business. It's how restaurants become reliably up and running neighborhood favorites. How retailers become seamlessly restocking, cyber-securing, must-visit shops. And how healthcare offices become the data managing caregivers that we all depend on. With reliable connectivity, enhanced cybersecurity, advanced fiber solutions, and Wi-Fi backup, Comcast Business is powering the engine of modern business. Powering possibilities.
Now through May 4th, new customers can get started with 300 megabit internet and Security Edge for $69 a month for 24 months. And ask how to get free installation on qualifying bundles. Plus, find out how to get a $500 prepaid card on a qualifying gig bundle. Call today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Requires enrollment in paperless billing and automatic payments with bank account. Equipment, taxes, and other fees extra. After 24 months, regular rates apply.
Welcome to Tire Discounters. Oh, hiya, Phantom.
Mike, I think I saw a fox on my way in.
Oh, that was the Carfax Carfox. He was congratulating us on our Carfax Top Rated Service Center Award.
I have always rated Tire Discounters at the very top.
Oh, thanks. So does Carfax. And not just for tires, but for all our services, too.
Alignment, brakes, shocks, and struts, and more.
Yes, sir.
But, Mike, do you think people believe Carfax over me?
Well, you are the Phantom tire buyer.
Exactly.
Mother's Day's almost here. Sundown Gardens is fully stocked with high-quality annuals, trees, shrubs, decor, and more. 186th Street and Spring Mill Road, sundowngardens.com.
Find the path to recovery that works for you. Learn more at cdc.gov/stopoverdose.
Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Just had an interesting question on social media. Somebody sent me a PM on Twitter or X. By the way, I'm at Guy Relford on Twitter/X. Give me a follow while you're on there, at Guy Relford. Been more active on there lately and enjoyed doing it. There's some pretty good interaction on that. And there doesn't seem, at least since Elon Musk has owned the platform, doesn't seem to be quite as much censorship and shadow banning and all that nonsense that tends to go on to an incredible degree on Facebook. But interesting question came in on X, which said, what about the fact the officer was drinking? And this goes back to the discussion we just had last segment about the Evansville police officer who was reportedly intoxicated while celebrating the graduation from their probationary period of a bunch of Evansville police officers, got drunk and then decided, as a joke apparently, to pull his gun and point it at other officers. He's now been charged with criminal recklessness with a deadly weapon, level 6 felony. But it's a great question. What about the fact that he was drunk? Well, that can factor into the criminal recklessness charge in that he didn't just pull a gun and point it. He got drunk, and while intoxicated, not only decided to carry the gun, but pulled it and pointed it. And is it more likely that he was endangering someone because he was intoxicated while he pulled the gun and pointed it? I don't think that's a hard argument to make. And I don't think it's a stretch to argue or for a jury to believe that 100%. But is there a separate crime? And this is interesting, and it separates Indiana from a lot of other states. Is there a separate crime for simply being intoxicated and in possession of a firearm? Because in a lot of states, even in states that talk about being very pro-2A or pro-gun, they have laws that say that you cannot possess a firearm while consuming alcohol. Even in Texas, they have a law that if you have any detectable level of alcohol in your system and you possess a gun, that's a crime. And a lot of states have laws that say you can't go into an establishment that serves alcohol while you're carrying a gun. Indiana doesn't have any of those laws. So there's not a separate crime. As I mentioned, it can certainly factor into criminal recklessness. But there's not a specific crime. If you get stone-faced, drop-down drunk and get in your car and drive home, and you've got a gun and a holster on your hip, and you get pulled over for OWI, and in the course of that investigation on the side of the road, the officer determines that you're carrying a gun, is there a separate crime for being in possession of a firearm while you're intoxicated? No, not in Indiana. And the reason I always encourage people to be responsible, and listen, I'm a guy, if you follow me here, or certainly if you heard me on Hammer and Nigel when I'm co-hosting, I'm a guy who enjoys a beer, enjoys a fine bourbon from time to time, and I enjoy having a cocktail. I'm also a guy who carries a gun every day. So how do you balance those things, given the fact it's not a crime in Indiana to consume alcohol while you're carrying a gun? I look at it exactly like driving. If I would not be comfortable driving based on whatever level of alcohol consumption I'm planning to engage in, if I wouldn't be comfortable driving, then I'm not comfortable carrying a firearm. And I make that decision to be a responsible gun owner. And listen, and a lot of people I know, and I respect this 1,000%, and I would never tell somebody they're wrong, they have a zero tolerance policy. They go, look, if I'm going to have a beer, I'm leaving the gun at home. Well, listen, I'll go out and sit in front of my office at the end of the day and have a beer, go out and have a beer at lunch with friends. I'm not going to leave my gun home every time I decide to go out and have a beer somewhere. So my litmus test is, again, the same as for driving, which tends to affect how much I drink much more than it affects how much I carry, because I don't want to relinquish my Second Amendment right because I'm planning on overindulging in alcohol consumption. And that's a good thing all the way around. It'll keep you out of trouble. It'll get you up earlier in the morning. It tends to work out pretty well because not only is driving obviously a huge issue, where we have to be responsible on that front, but also carrying a gun as well. But there is not a separate crime. That's why it's a matter of personal responsibility. And as I started to say, the reason I strongly encourage people to be responsible as well, because the more idiots like this Evansville police officer who get drunk while carrying a gun and then do something knuckleheaded, and it would be even worse if he, God forbid, hurt someone, like one of his fellow officers who decided to be hugely funny in his mind, pull his gun and point it at him, which is incredibly knuckleheaded and a crime, as we discussed. It would have been worse if he'd hurt someone. But even just doing what he did, which is pulling it and pointing it, there's going to be some legislator somewhere, I'll guarantee you, they hear that story, and what do they think? Oh, well, we need a law. These knuckleheads who carry guns, they're not responsible enough to regulate their own behavior, so we must regulate it for them. We need a law. We need a law to keep these people from being knuckleheads with guns. And all of a sudden now we got a new law in Indiana where I can't stop by somewhere and have a beer on my way home from work while I'm carrying my sidearm, because now there's a law, because some knucklehead or multiple knuckleheads decided to do irresponsible things with guns. It's a great lesson. I'll tell you what, we've got a little time before the bottom of the hour. Let's go to the phone lines. And David has called. David, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Yeah, how are you tonight?
Good, man. Thanks for calling.
Good. Yeah, I'm the one to ask about the alcohol, because in Indiana, and I agree with you, I hate to see people's rights restricted by laws because a few people can't do what they should be doing. But I would think if he has a self-defense or a defense of, well, I wouldn't have done anything, or I wouldn't have used the weapon, I was just joking around. If he repeated quite a bit, obviously he was, or he wouldn't have pulled it, I would think, with alcohol, then that, about ability to determine my control and what I'm doing seems to be lacking considerably, and I've now showed it.
No, I agree with you, David, and it does. It's a great example of how a knucklehead, in this case, a police officer, is doing something that really has the potential to jeopardize all of our rights. Because I could easily see a legislator, as I just mentioned, getting the idea of, hey, we need a new law because of knuckleheads like this guy. That's the reason I always, you know what? And as much as I support gun owners, I represent gun owners. I've got the Second Amendment tattooed on my right arm, for crying out loud. I am harsh on knuckleheads with guns because they're not just subjecting themselves to being prosecuted or sued, incarcerated and ridiculed. They're also jeopardizing our rights. When someone is a knucklehead with a gun, the legislators out there are a lot of them are just itching for an excuse. Well, there you go. That reason, that knucklehead right there who did whatever knuckleheaded thing he did with that gun is the reason we need another law. And suddenly my rights are restricted and your rights are restricted because some idiot decided to be a knucklehead with a gun. And that's why I'm going to be harsh on him. That's why I harp on that message. And I will always continue to do so. Let's quickly go back to the phone lines. And Anthony is called. Anthony, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Yeah, good evening. Good
Yes,
to
sir.
see you again. Yeah, there's kind of some experience in the military, 20 years of commissioned service.
Awesome.
And well, it was a privilege. And having to investigate a number of things having to do with soldiers doing kind of dumb stuff while they were intoxicated. And the whole thing with the military is that you were sober before you got intoxicated, and therefore you knew what you were doing while you were drinking.
Yeah.
And therefore you were responsible. You were responsible for the consequences of it. It was called, negligence. In fact, it was considered gross negligence.
Well, you made a conscious decision. You know, there was a point in time where you said, yes, while still sober, I'm going to order the next 2 or 3 or however many cocktails. And so I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with keeping people responsible when they make those decisions.
Oh yeah, and so the consequence was that even though you can claim later that I didn't know what I was doing because I was drunk, well, you knew what you were doing when you got drunk, and therefore you were absolutely, positively responsible and grossly negligent. That was the whole status of the military.
Yeah, well, you know what? I can't say that I disagree with the logic of that. Even as a guy who enjoys a cocktail from time to time, I think that's a threshold that we can be held to. That's a standard that we should be held to. I have no issues with that. And thanks so much to both David and Anthony for calling. Great calls, great questions, great comments. Give us a call. Join the discussion, 317-239-9393. We're taking a break. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Kendall and Casey.
You just heard him mention dignity.
Simple dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity.
Dignity.
He's turned into Randy Marsh from South Park. That's America. I'm sorry. It's America.
It's about dignity.
Yes.
Arresting me for what? I'm not allowed to stand up for myself? I thought this was America.
Kendall and Casey. Weekdays 9 till noon on 93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
Employee pricing. That's right. At Andy Moore Ford in Plainfield, you can get employee pricing across a full lineup of your favorite trucks and SUVs. Their entire American inventory has been marked with employee pricing, so you pay what they pay on F-150s, on Super Duties, Explorers, all of them with employee pricing. And if you need something a little smaller but still want to be able to haul the crew and cargo around, the Edge is the perfect choice for you. And you'll definitely enjoy the excellent fuel economy. Plus, it's loaded with safety features. Get more to your door with Andy Moore Ford. Simply purchase your vehicle online and they'll deliver it to you. And if you need to sell or trade your current vehicle, the time has never been better. Andy Moore Ford will pay top dollar for your used vehicle, even if you don't buy from them. Employee pricing on all your favorite Fords are at Andy Moore Ford in Plainfield, 2713 East Main Street in Plainfield, or online at Andy Moore Ford, MOHR. I love Andy. AndyMooreFord.com.
Spring is here, and Damon's is full speed ahead with endless plant production of perennials, annuals, hanging baskets, roses, and planters. trucks are arriving with fresh trees and shrubs. Damon's friendly staff is ready to assist you and get you the help you need. So for any of your gardening needs, experience Damon's South on Emerson Avenue and Damon's West on Rockville Road.
Damon's Lawn and Garden, Indiana's most complete garden centers.
Sometimes an identity threat is a ring of professional hackers. And sometimes it's an overworked accountant who forgot to encrypt their connection while sending bank details.
I need a coffee.
And you need LifeLock because your info is in endless places. It only takes one mistake to expose you to identity theft. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS at lifelock.com. Terms apply.
This hour on 93 WIBC is powered by Miss M's Home and Garden, Johnson County's spring nursery headquarters.
Fox News, I'm Roger Stern. President Trump is out with a budget blueprint which cuts $163 billion in domestic spending, and it increases defense spending by 13% to $1 trillion. But some Republicans are balking at that.
Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Republican Roger Wicker says the plan does not boost Pentagon funding enough, saying in a statement the budget would decrease President Trump's military options.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. Is now up to Congress to decide. The White House is asking for emergency help to give DOJ access to Social Security data that was blocked by lower courts.
Only a few employees are entrusted with the information that includes personal records on nearly every American, including their school records and salaries.
Fox's Jan Lee Painter. America is listening to Fox News.
Premier Deck Coating, the ultimate deck protection. Who are they? Well, they're a sister company of Rhino Shield, and Premier Deck Coating is the product you need if you're tired of applying the same old stain and paint every couple of years to your deck. It's Terry, Stacy, and David and I have a deck that's probably 25 years old. The countless hours and the money that we spend on maintaining that deck never ends. And then we heard about Premier Deck Coating. Family-owned, based right here in Indy, and they are going to completely transform our deck with their special formulated product, which repels moisture, scratch-resistant in virtually any color that we want, and backed by a 10-year guarantee. No more spending time staining or painting every year. Premier Deck Coating will keep our deck looking great for years to come. Premier Deck Coating can also do fences and pergolas, too. For a free quote, call 317-696-4071 or visit premierdeckcoating.com.
So what's in the bag today? Yesterday's leftovers? Another lunch meat sandwich? Well, go ahead and pull up a rock and settle in for a half hour of I wish I was eating something else. Or you could be eating something else or someplace else. If you're brown bagging it at the corner of 30th and Shadeland area, drop over to His Place Eatery for 30 minutes of why didn't I know about this place sooner? Nothing fancy, not a lot of frills. They save that for the quality of the meal. Like ribs that fall off the bone, southern fried chicken, sides that will cause your taste buds to thank you into tomorrow. Put that in your brown bag and eat it. Better yet, bank the bag. Go to His Place Eatery at the corner of 30th and Shadeland or the newest location off 86th and Ditch Road. Your dirty boots and work clothes are welcome here. His Place, your place for lunch. Go to hisplaceeatery.com to learn more.
The show about gun rights, gun safety, and responsible gun ownership. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. I just saw today... And it's interesting to me that this wasn't more widely publicized. And, of course, possibility is I just missed it, too. But I have a feeling, I know why this wasn't very well publicized, and that is there was apparently an attempted mass shooting, specifically an attempted school shooting is a better term, an attempted school shooting right here in Seymour, Indiana. And listen, I've been down to Seymour a lot. Our friend Jim Lucas, Representative Jim Lucas, represents that district. And the story, and I was reading up on this, I read several different articles on it, just local news, really, including the local Seymour paper. But a person first went to the high school there in Seymour and tried to get into the high school while carrying a gun and could not get in. And that is such an important point. Could not get in. He then went over to the public library, went through the first set of doors, and then shot through a second set of doors, glass doors. A lady described as a clerk, I'm thinking librarian, but described as a clerk in the articles I read, was actually injured by birdshot. So the report is that he had a shotgun. And then the guy came into the library, tried to shoot more rounds out of the shotgun, and the shotgun wouldn't operate. And whether it misfired or quote unquote jammed, had some other malfunction, failure to feed, whatever it might be, he couldn't get any more rounds off. And then a patron there in the library heroically tackled this guy and held him down while police officers were responding. But what really caught my attention, and I was so happy to see, was that he could not get in the school. And there was even a report that there was a particular school resource officer that he was targeting. And this guy was 18 and a student at the high school. And I don't like to use these people's names. I'll leave that out of it. If they're looking for some kind of notoriety or fame, they're not going to get it here on the Gun Guy Show. But I was so happy to see he could not get in the school. Because listen, as a Second Amendment advocate, as someone who fights for gun rights, I catch the same grief, the same attacks from the same groups of people over and over and over again, and it's gone on for years. And it's completely nonsensical, and so it doesn't bother me a bit. But I'll have people post, comment on my social media or send me emails and say, oh, well, you oppose things like common sense gun control, like an assault weapon ban, quote unquote. And so you have blood on your hands. You care more about your precious guns than you do the lives of school children. And you and the NRA have blood on your hands. And I got to tell you, as someone who has 3 kids and 5 grandkids, being accused of having the blood of children on my hands is not something I take lightly, but I can also dismiss it in a millisecond because it's completely nonsensical. Because we know why mass shootings happen. We know why school shootings happen. We know why violence happens generally in this country. And obviously, there are a wide variety of answers to that question, but the Second Amendment isn't one of them. And where you have the amount of mental illness that we have in this country, untreated mental illness, then where you even have people diagnosed and treated with psychotropic drugs that are overprescribed over and over and over again, that have as warnings for these particular drugs that can cause suicidal or homicidal tendencies, and doctors prescribe them anyway, and where we ignore the warning signs, and we would rather coddle people than deal with them and deal with the issues they're going through, where you have the lowest number of people in history that identify with an organized religion in this country, where you have a hugely high percentage of people growing up in one-parent or no-parent homes, where you have widespread illegal drug use. Yes, you combine all those factors, combined with a culture that's been created in this country, that however you feel and whatever you feel like doing, that's okay, because that's your truth. You worry about you. You're the center of the universe. People are told that. And you combine all those other factors, and yes, we're going to see violence. But the Second Amendment is not why we see violence. In fact, where people are capable and allowed to defend themselves, we see less violence. And that's been true in this country since it's been a country. But in this particular case, on school shootings, and again, I get accused of, well, you don't care about kids in schools, you care more about your guns, and you just want to fight against any gun control. You want to fight against things like an assault weapon ban, but you don't have any solutions. You don't have any solutions. You just want to fight against common sense gun regulation. I'll tell you what, if you've been listening to the Gun Guy Show at any length of time, I talk about solutions all the time. I talk about the phases of a developing mass shooting, in particular, a developing school shooting, where that can be prevented, where that can be interrupted, where that can be mitigated. I've talked about that recurrently, and I'll get into that, and I'll talk about how this applies to a failed school shooting, apparently, on Wednesday in Seymour. Do all that when we come back, as well as take your calls, 317-239-9393. 317-239-9393. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Hammer and Nigel.
I told my kids this the other day, and it blew their mind. Right now, in the United States of America, we live in a country where the mayor of Knox County has put the Department of Education through a table before. Glenn Jacobs has put Linda McMahon through incredible. A table before. That's awesome.
Hammer and Nigel, weekdays 3 till 7 on 93 WIBC and WIBC.com.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. Our most popular class is Essentials of Indiana Gun Law, and we've got one of those coming up Saturday, May 10th, a week from today. It's going to be 9 a.m. to 1:30 to 2 o'clock p.m. at Indy Arms on the northeast side. $50 for an individual, $95 for couples. It's 4.5 to 5 hours, the most important legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner. We'd love to see you there. You can register right online. Just go to tactical-firearms.com and click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
If you can plan barbecues and weddings, you can plan to protect yourself from a natural disaster. Sign up for local alerts, prepare an emergency kit, and make a family communications plan. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Beck Toyota has been sold to the Hubler Automotive Group. But before the Hubler name comes, everything goes. And when Hubler says everything goes, we mean it. Every pre-owned Corolla, Camry, RAV4, Highlander, Tacoma, Tundra, every car, every truck, everything in the showroom, everything on the lot. Need credit? Managers will be on site, accepting applications for immediate review. Plus, Hubler's got you covered. Every Q-certified vehicle includes our 100,000-mile limited powertrain warranty. Before the grand opening of Hubler Toyota, everything goes. It's your chance to save like never before. Don't miss it. When Hubler says everything goes, we mean it. On US 31 South in Indianapolis, across from Hubler Chevrolet. Visit HublerToyota.com. Before the Hubler name comes, everything goes. Warranty on select models less than 9 years old.
While retinitis pigmentosa takes Mark's vision, his family gives him hope, whether at the family business or at home with his wife and sons. He knows he's not fighting alone. For 50 years, the Foundation Fighting Blindness has funded research into treatments and cures for blinding retinal diseases, providing hope to people with vision loss. And for Mark, winning the fight means being there for his family. The Foundation Fighting Blindness. Together, we're winning. Help us end blinding diseases at fightingblindness.org.
Latrell spent more than 8 years in foster care. His world changed when he was adopted at 15 with help from the Dave Thomas Foundation for Adoption.
I think about how much we love him, and I wish we could have had him for his entire childhood.
The foundation is changing the lives of thousands of teens waiting in foster care. You can help. Learn more at davethomasfoundation.org.
Mother's Day is almost here. Miss M's Home and Garden is fully stocked with high-quality annuals, trees, shrubs, decor, and more. State Road 135 in Bargersville.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org. This message brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
No Kid Hungry is providing healthy meals and hope to hungry kids so they can build better futures. Learn more at helpnokidhungry.org.
The WIBC mashup is everything you love, from fiery debates to laugh out loud takes, all in one podcast. No weak sauce, just the best of the day each weekday. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. Your rights, your responsibilities, your guns. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Tell you what, we've had some people on the phone for a while. Let's go to the phone lines and go out. Steve. Steve, welcome to The Gun Guy Show.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, man. You doing all right?
Yeah, doing great. Love the show.
Thank you.
Hey, I have a friend that recently retired, is getting ready to drive to Chicago and take the trip across Route 66.
Oh, cool.
And just wanted to know what would he need to do to carry a handgun across state lines?
Well, that's a little bit of a tough question, Steve, because that's going to depend to some degree on the law in each state. And I can tell you exactly what the law is in Indiana, but it's a little tougher to stay up with the other 49. But I can tell you, going up to Chicago, Illinois, I should say, changed their law here recently in that if you have an Indiana license to carry, you can now have a gun in your vehicle while in Illinois. You can't take it out of the vehicle. If you get out of the vehicle, it's got to stay in the vehicle locked out of sight. But that is a nice thing if you have an Indiana license to carry. Beyond that, and one of my lifelong things, I still want to do this before I'm too old, which may be coming up sooner than later, is ride a motorcycle for the whole Route 66. And I can't tell you exactly what that route is without having a map in front of me, but I like to check the reciprocity page at U.S. Concealed Carry Association, where you can see which states are either constitutional carry, that they recognize, meaning you don't need a license even for non-residents, or what states honor the Indiana license to carry. And I've gone on motorcycle trips. I've not ridden Route 66 specifically, but I've ridden a motorcycle all over this country, and I've always checked reciprocity one way or another to see where my license is honored and where it's not. So that's step one. But there's a bigger issue, or at least as big an issue, which is you also, when you're going to travel with a gun, knowing what states recognize the license is just step one. Step two is, what are all those idiosyncratic laws from state to state to state that may vary dramatically from what we have in Indiana? The one I just talked about, where I want to stop in. I've been on a motorcycle all day. I'm getting ready to check into a hotel. I want to pull over and have a beer and a burger at a local watering hole before I go check in my hotel. Well, can I carry my gun into that bar? A lot of states, it's illegal to carry my gun in there. A lot of states, as I mentioned, it's illegal to consume a beer. And any number of other issues. You get pulled over in your vehicle. Do you have to tell the officer there's a gun in your car? In Indiana, you don't. In many other states, you do. In some, it's very significant penalty. It's a felony if you don't in some states. Can you take a gun into places like a sports stadium or a theater or any number of other areas? Even if your hotel in some states has a lobby bar that sells drinks by the glass, which they typically do, they sell individual servings of alcohol in the lobby bar of your hotel. You can't have a gun in the hotel in some states. So there's just a whole bunch of those, local laws that vary so much from state to state that you also have to study up on. I really like an app. And look, I have no connection to these people. I have no financial incentive to say this, but I really like an app that I keep on my phone. I've had for years. It's run by a bunch of lawyers, and it's really good at being kept up to date. Every time I open it up, it says updating, and it cycles for a while. It's just an app called CCW, and it's got a map of the United States, a multicolored map of the United States with a handgun over the top of it is what it looks like. And you load that on your phone, and it's not only got reciprocity data as far as what states recognize your license, but it's got state law summaries like duty to inform during a traffic stop, prohibited in areas that serve alcohol, prohibited to consume alcohol, and a whole bunch more prohibited areas. So it gives you summaries of all those things. And like I said, in my experience, they do a really nice job of keeping it up to date. So I would recommend all those things. But really, to travel, I do it all the time. I fly with firearms often I like to take training classes out of state, go out to Gunsight, see my friend Ken Campbell, CEO out there, or I've been to many other states as well. I like taking car trips or motorcycle trips, but it takes some research. It really takes some due diligence, and that's a state by state analysis, which unfortunately I can't do for you here on the Gun Guy Show. Let's go back to the phone lines. We've got Casey who's called in. Casey, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Yeah, I've called in before.
Okay, welcome back.
You're really informative.
Thank you.
Mine is kind of a two-part question. I live in Jackson County down here, so I heard about the library shooting.
Yeah.
I was wondering about the legality of carrying a handgun in a library, if that's considered a government building or not. And the second one was, what if the dude would have shot the guy instead of tackled him?
Well, two great questions, Casey. Well, one is, obviously, if it's school property, as opposed to the local community public library, if it's school property, that's the first thing you got to ask yourself. Is it owned by a school corporation or a private or parochial school? If it's school property, then absolutely not, can't carry a gun there. If it's a local library, like owned by the county, like Jackson County or the city of Seymour, then not only is it legal to carry there, but the city, unless there's a school located in the same building so that it's school property, they can't tell you can't carry a gun there, because that's actually prohibited by the Indiana Firearms Preemption Law that says local governments can't carry firearms, can't regulate firearms. And the, Jackson County and the city of Seymour fall within that as local governments. The other part of your question, a guy comes in with a gun to a public place like that. He's already shot. He's already wounded one person. If the person would have shot him, well, that's the Eli Dickens situation in the Greenwood Park Mall. Guy came in, attempted a mass shooting. Eli interrupted the mass shooting. He saved countless lives. Absolutely justified, because you can defend others from serious bodily injury or death just like you can yourself. And so that absolutely, in my mind, based on the report of the shooting I've seen, would have been justified. We're at the top of the hour. It's time to take a break. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Turning 65, new to Medicare, or just moved? If you qualify for Medicare and Medicaid, a Humana Dual Eligible Special Needs Plan, a DSNP, may give you the extra benefits you're looking for. A DSNP helps cover things like prescriptions and checkups, but it also helps pay for essentials too. With a Humana DSNP, you get $225 a month for eligible groceries, rent, utilities, and more. Plus, whatever you don't spend carries over to the next month. You may even get benefits like $0 copays on routine prescriptions, plus routine dental, vision, or hearing coverage. All of this could make a difference for your health and wallet. Learn more at GetHumana.com. Humana, a more human way to healthcare. Humana is a coordinated care HMO SNP plan with a Medicare contract and a contract with the Indiana Medicaid program. Enrollment in any Humana plan depends on contract renewal. Allowance amounts cannot be combined with other benefit allowances. Limitations and restrictions may apply.
You know exactly why you need to remodel that kitchen of yours. The space, it's outdated. You can't move around like you used to. It doesn't work like it needs to. You want to entertain and you want to improve your quality of life. This can happen, just not with the kitchen you have. You need to call Boer Remodeling, B-O-O-H-E-R, BoerRemodeling.com. They can take that old kitchen that's deteriorating and broken down and turn it into something that works for you and your family. Their 5-step design process from start to finish, the consultation, the preliminary design, the design development, getting all the documents together, and then getting it done. The best materials, the most skilled craftsmen in Central Indiana. Boer Remodeling will guide you through the entire process, starting with a free initial consultation, and they stand behind their work with a 2-year workmanship guarantee. Create that new kitchen. Design experts can use an existing layout or begin completely from scratch. Talk to Boer Remodeling today. B-O-O-H-E-R, BoerRemodeling.com. That's BoerRemodeling.com.
Welcome to Tire Discounters. Oh, you're the Carfax guy.
The Carfox from Carfax.
Wow.
And you, sir, work at Tire Discounters.
I sure do.
The Carfax top-rated service center.
Oh, right. You know, a lot of that's because of our services. But people think we're just about tires.
Maybe it's your name.
Yeah?
Tire Discounters. And your jingle.
Oh, you like it?
I think it needs something.
Yeah? Like what?
Hit it. Plus brakes, oil changes, shocks, and struts, and more. Now that speaks to me.
Big Joe here for your trusted local independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer, B&W HVAC Plumbing and Electrical.
Summer heat is coming. Will your air conditioner be ready? Don't risk an expensive breakdown. A quick tune-up from B&W catches problems early and keeps your family cool and comfortable. Join thousands of Hoosiers who trust B&W. Call 317-214-0108 or go to bplusw.com today.
B&W HVAC Plumbing and Electrical, your American Standard dealer since 1961.
Broadcasting from the Technology Recycler Studios, this is Indy's Mobile News, 93 WIBC, WIBC HD1 Indianapolis. The news starts now.
$7 trillion. I'm Roger Stern, Fox News. The White House released President Trump's 2026 budget plan aiming to cut spending on many government programs.
He released his proposed 2026 budget this week, promising the golden age, but he's being pressed about the future of his tariffs. The president says he is not worried about recession and thinks we'll have, quote, the greatest economy in the history of our country. President Trump's proposed $1.7 trillion budget promises more than $100 billion in cuts to non-defense federal spending. It increases spending at the border, coupled with cuts to foreign aid.
Fox's Matt Finn with the president in Florida. Senate Democrats plan to force a vote on deportation transparency this after the mistaken removal of illegal immigrant Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
In the coming weeks, the Senate will take up that Democratic resolution requesting the Trump administration detail the, quote, human rights practices of El Salvador, including its treatment of inmates in the mega prison where Kilmar Abrego Garcia was briefly detained. While the resolution itself doesn't mention Abrego Garcia by name, it calls for a report of the steps taken to comply with court orders to facilitate detainees' return to the U.S. The White House claims it has no power to return Abrego Garcia and has emphasized his alleged MS-13 gang ties and accusations of domestic abuse by his wife in court documents from 2021 and 2020.
Fox's Chanley Painter. Australia's centre-left Labour Party has won today's parliamentary election. Anthony Albanese is the first prime minister to win a second term in 21 years. He says Australians look after each other and described opposition Liberal Party leader Peter Dutton as Doji Dutton. America is listening to Fox News.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The voices America trusts. Download it now. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
I'm Ben Domenech, Fox News contributor and editor of the Transom.com daily newsletter, and I'm inviting you to join a conversation every week with the smartest thinkers out there about the issues Americans face and where we're going as a nation. This show will feature deep dive interviews with newsmakers and some of your favorite Fox News analysts. I hope you'll join me as we dive into the fray. It's the Ben Domenech Podcast.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you download podcasts.
Voice of America is returning.
93 WIBC Mobile News. On the level, on the go.
Setting his trial for the summer. I'm Jarrett Lewis. Here's what's trending this hour. Joshua Hull pleading not guilty Friday. In a Vigo County courtroom, investigators say he was using the app Telegram to access child porn, including videos of children as young as 13. A judge released Hull on his own recognizance, but ordered a mental health evaluation while he waits for trial. Prosecutors argued against the release. Hull is due back in court June 2nd with a jury trial scheduled for July 3rd. Now that his father won't be able to attend Indiana Pacers games for the foreseeable future, Pacer guard Tyrese Halliburton reacted to the news Friday. John Herrick reports.
Tyrese says his father, John, was in the wrong for confronting Milwaukee Bucks forward Giannis Antetokounmpo after the game Tuesday night, but he believes this whole thing is just a small bump in the road.
At the end of the day, it's my dad, so I'm not going to ridicule him by any means. Still have a lot of love for him. I love him dearly. He's going to sit at home and watch the game, and he'll be just fine.
And Tyrese says his dad should not be defined by this one thing, and he won't be.
The Pacers play Game 1 in the second round of the playoffs Sunday against the Cleveland Cavaliers. We're about 3 weeks away from the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500. On Friday, a porch party at the Harrison Center in Indy.
Get in the spirit, get in the race spirit, and join us for a little porching event. So that means we're handing out porching kits. You can take these home, decorate your own place.
That's Michael Colton-Mark talking to Wish TV. I'm Jarrett Lewis on the level, on the go, and on WIBC.com. Now the forecasts from the American Standard Cooling Weather Center.
Tonight, on-off sprinkles to light showers. Showers will increase in coverage through the early morning hours, lows in the upper 40s. For tomorrow, that's where we're going to have steady rain set up across central Indiana. On Wish TV, Storm Track 8 meteorologist Ryan Morse for 93 WIBC.
My name is Jamie Bowles, and I was diagnosed with non-small cell lung cancer in December of 2018. Nobody would even know looking at me that I have stage 4 lung cancer, and I'm grateful for biomarker testing for that. When I was sitting down with my oncologist, there was already state-of-the-art medication available that I was going to be put on right then and there. Ask your doctor how comprehensive biomarker testing before treatment may help you decide on the best treatment. Visit NoOneMissed.org to learn more.
A public service message from Longevity Foundation.
Lanny went to college and racked up huge debt.
A little bit over $100,000.
For a degree he couldn't use? Now what?
I had a friend that went to my computer career.
They even helped him get hired immediately after graduation.
One of the things I love about IT is that you can work from anywhere you want.
You could become an IT pro in just months, including cybersecurity and the basics of AI with zero experience at mycomputercareer.edu.
It worked for me, and I know it can work for you.
This is one student's experience. Individual results vary.
You let him try violin because you love him. And if you love him that much, love him enough to make sure he's buckled up and in the back seat. Find out more at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the Second Amendment, and this is the Gun Guy.
Boom, 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 boom. Bang, 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 bang. Boom, 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 boom. Bang, bang, bang.
With Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back for hour number 2 of the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. Thank you for joining us. If you're following on the Twitter feed, the YouTube feed, I should say, we welcome you to that as well. There's a chat function on there. People seem to enjoy that. It's a little tough for me to keep up with while I'm doing live radio, but try to check it out a little bit during breaks. And give us a call. Join the discussion, 317-239-9393. Before we took a couple of calls in our last segment, I was talking about being accused of just someone who fights against gun control without having any real solutions, particularly when it comes to school shootings. And if you listen to the show or you followed me for any length of time, you know that's the opposite of being true. Because what I've noticed and what I've advocated for and talked about to law enforcement, I've talked to different community leaders about this, is there are certain critical phases, there are critical stages in a developing school shooting. And we need to focus on those in terms of first prevention. Prevention. And people seem to think, well, and I see these political people, and if I have time here on the show, as I put out on social media, the Democrats, Adam Schiff, of all people, has introduced a new assault weapon ban with a whole bunch of Democrat sponsors in Congress. And so they're trying to ban assault weapons. And what they will tell you, and how many politicians have given this, we heard this from Biden. How many politicians have heard you say, we can stop school shootings and mass shootings if we just ban assault weapons? Really? The worst school shooting in history was at Virginia Tech University and was committed with 2 handguns. And nobody's talking about banning handguns. Plus there are, and this number is hard to keep up with because the number just keeps absolutely blowing up. But however you want to define so-called assault weapons, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, if you're talking about semi-automatic rifles with a detachable magazine is the most common definition. And sometimes they add, with a certain number of features like a pistol grip or a flash hider or a folding or collapsible stock. But generally, you're talking about the AR-15, AK-47 type rifles. There are an estimated, and I've seen a lot of different numbers on this, but the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the industry group, they put out numbers from time to time. The last one I saw was something of 18 to 20 million in this country, and that estimate is a few years old. I'm guessing it's substantially more than that. So are those just going to disappear? Politicians seem to think, and anti-gun people seem to think, if you ban something, it's this magic wand, or you push a magic button, and all those items that you have such a hard time with just disappear from society. Just poof. Obviously, it doesn't work that way. And the psychopaths and the terrorists and the criminals are, by definition, not going to hand their guns over. And frankly, a whole lot of us who are law-abiding citizens aren't going to either. So of those 15 to 20 or 25 million of the demonic assault weapons, quote unquote, as you hear them described, those don't disappear. So you're not going to prevent anything. And we had an assault weapon ban, quote unquote, very similar to what they're proposing now, what Adam Schiff was crowing about just last week. And we had an assault weapon ban from 94 to 04. It had no measurable effect on crime. That's from the National Institute of Justice, the research arm of the Department of Justice. And they were looking at whether it should be renewed. And they said if it's renewed, because quote unquote assault weapons have such an incredibly low rate of usage in crime generally, you can't even measure the effect of the ban. Too low to measure. That's a quote out of that study. So you're not going to prevent anything by banning certain classes of firearms. So at this stage, people say, well, you don't have any solution. Well, yeah, I do. Let's first focus on prevention. And you start with risk identification. What's that? You know, how many of these mass shootings in general, or school shootings in particular, how many have you heard about where we hear law enforcement, including the FBI, say, well, he was on our radar. Okay. He was on your radar, but nothing happened to interrupt this shooting because we're talking about the shooting. And we don't have enough of a culture. And you hear public service announcements now, including right here on this station, about see something, say something. It absolutely has to be part of the culture, but schools and local officials need to be much better about risk identification, because time and time and time again, these people are quote unquote on our radar in terms of law enforcement or school officials, but nobody did anything. And that's why that intervention and getting these people help. And people want to talk about red flag laws. Look, you don't even have to talk about red flag laws, because totally separate and apart from red flag laws in virtually every state, you have emergency detention and evaluation laws. We've had one here in Indiana long before we ever had a red flag law that allows the seizure of firearms, where you can take someone and for their own good, if they're a danger to themselves or others, you can have them evaluated. And if they are a danger to themselves or others, in fact, as determined by medical professionals, you can put them through civil commitment proceedings and get them help, get them treated. And we don't need the knee-jerk reaction to red flag laws, because we have emergency detention and evaluation laws, and we've had for generations. And so get people help, get them evaluated. And God forbid, don't allow them to continue to do what they do in terms of having access, in this case, to schools. Once they're identified to be that person who's at risk. And I'm not talking about incarcerating innocent people. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the truly mentally ill, the people that truly in need of help, because they're going to, in fact, hurt themselves or hurt other people. And treatment and help is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about snatching healthy, innocent people off the street and locking them up in straitjackets. But where people need intervention and need to be helped, let's make that happen. That's prevention. Then secondly, let's say we fail to do that. There's an identifiable risk out there, or maybe it's not identifiable. The person's never expressed any intent to hurt anyone or much less shoot up a school. So we fail. And they're planning a school shooting. What next? Keep them out of the damn school. And then we're talking about hardening schools. And, oh, man, I've talked about that publicly many times. I've talked about it in the Indiana General Assembly. And I get this reaction. I don't want to send my kid to a school that's a prison. And if you talk about fortifying schools, we're talking about turning schools into prisons, and I don't want my kid going to a school that's a prison. You know, do you hesitate to take your kid on an airplane and go through the secure area of the airport? Does that bother you? Does that feel like a prison because there are armed police officers present in security, that there are people with metal detectors, and there are law enforcement officers capable of dispatching a person who's intent on coming into that area and doing harm to other people? Does that really bother you to go through an airport? Well, I'm not taking my kid on a trip to Hawaii because I don't want to take him through an airport because it feels like a prison. When have you ever heard that? It doesn't exist. I would never take my kid on a tour of the White House or a tour of Congress. Well, there's armed security. They screen people coming and going, or at least coming anyway. This, I don't want to turn my school into a prison, is complete nonsense. There are a lot of places. We protect our money in banks, our politicians in government buildings, our travelers on airplanes, and countless other people in countless other places much better than we protect our kids in schools, or at least historically that has been true. Hardening schools to make it harder or, if not impossible, for bad guys to come in and do our kids harm, as well as our teachers and our administrators, is not turning them into prisons. It's simply protecting the most precious commodity we have, which is our children. Yes, harden the schools. And when I heard that this guy in Seymour went to the school first, at a minimum because he had targeted, again, in the reports I read, a school resource officer, he couldn't get in the school. There was no school shooting because he couldn't get in. Well, Seymour High School, God bless you, and congratulations. Because whatever measures you had in place kept a guy with a gun, a bad guy with a gun, from getting into your school. God bless you and congratulations. And if some knucklehead out there, some anti-gun person would say, well, that's a shame that the kids are going to school in a no, they're going to school in a place that's keeping them safe. Just like we keep your money safe in a bank, or we keep the politicians safe in government buildings. We keep the jewels safe in a jewelry store. Yes, because we have security. We guard them because they're important. Children are at the top of the list. But then let's say we fail there. Let's say we fail to identify a risk, and then we fail to keep them out of the school. We have not sufficiently hardened the school or have security measures in place, and they get in. What about now? Listen, I've talked about it before. It's been a year or two, but I went to a presentation on mass shootings generally and school shootings in particular, put on by a guy named Ed Monk. And Ed Monk is top-notch, man, a real professional. He's researched every mass shooting in the history of the United States, and he's focused on school shootings as a subset. And he has a presentation. I went when the National Association of School Resource Officers was meeting here a couple of years ago here in Indy. I was honored that he invited me to come and sit through that presentation. And the whole presentation was just unbelievably good because it's based on real data and real information. It's not based on politics. He took politics completely out of it. And he said, the number of casualties determined in a mass shooting. Once a school shooting starts, and that's where we are now in this discussion, because we failed to identify the risk, we failed to keep them out of the school. Now they're in the school. And Ed Monk, and again, he's researched as a former military, former law enforcement officer, actually spent time as a teacher in a high school, and went through mass shooting drills like where we're herding kids into a corner, and shielding them with a teacher's body, or we're telling them to hide under their desks. He's looking around going, this is crazy. This is no way to protect kids. This is nuts. It's going to get kids killed. And with his law enforcement and military background, decided to devote a career into studying this and teaching on this and lecturing on this, and that's what he does, and he does a hell of a job. It is incredibly good and incredibly informative. But he said, the duration of a mass shooting once it starts, this is true in a school, it's true in a mall, it's true wherever it might break out, God forbid. It's about two things, math and time. Math and time, that's all it's about. It's not about the weapon being used. It's not about your politics, not about your feelings. It's about math and time. What do we mean? How many victims are available, and how much time does the shooter have to kill them? That's what it's about. Math and time. And he will show you. And because he has all the data. And he loves talking about the reason he invited me to come sit through this presentation here in Indy, the National Association of School Resource Officers, is because I was Eli Dickens' lawyer, and I had all the information. Eli's never wanted to talk publicly about it. He never has, and in my mind, he never will. And God bless him, that's his choice. But he authorized me to talk about it, and I know all the details on that. I've seen the security tape. I've interviewed the police officers, and I've spent a lot of time talking to Eli about it as well. And so I went through all that information. I went through it with Ed Monk, and he loves talking about that because here we had a person available on scene in the Greenwood Park Mall who was available to deliver brutal, lethal, deadly force almost immediately. That is the immediate application of violent, ruthless, deadly force. And I'm not saying that Eli had anything angry or evil in his heart. That's not my point. I'm talking about the delivery of deadly force without compromise and without hesitation is what it takes to save lives in a mass shooting once it starts. The immediate, ruthless application of deadly force. That's what it takes. Because that's what cuts down the time factor in the math plus time equals casualties. And in that case, the reason I had T-shirts made, I talked about it last week, say 15 seconds, be like Eli. That mass shooting lasted a grand total of 15 seconds. Now, 3 people still died, 1 person wounded, but dozens and dozens and dozens survived. And then you have something like Uvalde, the school shooting in Texas, where officers inexplicably refused to engage the shooter and stood around for over an hour while kids died. And how many died there? Compared to the 3 in the Greenwood Park Mall when it was stopped in 15 seconds. And you go through the worst mass shootings. We're talking about people who were not interrupted, who were not engaged, who were not met with merciless, ruthless, deadly force. They killed the most people. That's what it takes. And so you need someone there when the shooting starts. There when the shooting starts, who has the capacity and the training and the mentality to engage that shooter, that murderer, with merciless, ruthless, deadly force in the least amount of time possible. And that means someone's there. Can we have a school resource officer in every classroom? Of course not. In necessarily in every building on a school campus? Maybe not. And that's where you get into the discussion pretty quickly about the logic of arming teachers and staff. Because at the end of the day, the number of casualties in a mass shooting, once it starts, if it's not interrupted or prevented, if it's not prevented altogether, once it starts, it's about math and time. And that time factor is what's so critical. And a school resource officer 10 minutes away on the other side of a building, or a SWAT team 45 minutes away, can't do anywhere near as much good as an armed human being who's trained, equipped, and has the appropriate mindset to do what has to be done in the least amount of time possible. That's logic. And when you review the data, like Ed Monk has, and I've studied his information and loved his presentation and had a chance to follow up with him on all of it, that's what it boils down to. And you want to talk about banning weapons, it gets laughable really fast, because that's not what mitigates casualties in a mass shooting. That's not what prevents them. That's not what has any effect whatsoever. We've learned that through decades in this country. I've gone well past the quarter of the hour. It's time to take a break. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Another update is just minutes away.
President Trump told them at the University of Alabama last night.
Believe in the American dream. It's real, it's there, and it's right before you.
Telling the class of 2025,
America is good, terrorists are bad.
Hear the news.
Drive-by shooting last night. Cops say they're looking for the shooter.
As events happen.
Father of Tyrese Halliburton no longer allowed to attend Pacers home or road games.
We'll happen to be there.
Mini marathon weekend.
93 WIBC Mobile News.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. Our Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class is coming up again a week from today, Saturday, May 10th. It's going to be at Indy Arms there at 2550 East 55th Street. We'd love to see you there. It's from 9 a.m. to 1:30 to 2 o'clock p.m. $50 for an individual, $95 for couples. 4.5 to 5 hours, the most important legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner. You can sign up right online. It's tactical-firearms.com. Just click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
Employee pricing. That's right. At Andy Moore Ford in Plainfield, you can get employee pricing across a full lineup of your favorite trucks and SUVs. Their entire American inventory has been marked with employee pricing, so you pay what they pay on F-150s, on Super Duties, Explorers, all of them with employee pricing. And if you need something a little smaller but still want to be able to haul the crew and cargo around, the Edge is the perfect choice for you. And you'll definitely enjoy the excellent fuel economy. Plus, it's loaded with safety features. Get more to your door with Andy Moore Ford. Simply purchase your vehicle online and they'll deliver it to you. And if you need to sell or trade your current vehicle, the time has never been better. Andy Moore Ford will pay top dollar for your used vehicle, even if you don't buy from them. Employee pricing on all your favorite Fords are at Andy Moore Ford in Plainfield, 2713 East Main Street in Plainfield, or online at Andy Moore Ford, MOHR. AndyMooreFord.com.
Everyone is talking about Galaxy Concrete Coatings and their transformation. Like your neighbor Dennis.
I was in the process of refinishing my garage and, trying to turn it into a man cave. So I started searching, online, and I ran across Galaxy.
Galaxy Concrete Coatings is not epoxy. It's better.
First thing I wanted to do initially is I wanted to repair where the concrete had eroded. They said they could do that. I said, well, heck, let me go ahead and get the entire floor covered.
Commercial or residential, 4 times stronger than epoxy, and it comes with a lifetime warranty.
They were so courteous and respectful of the home and the property. And when they're done, they cleaned up, picked up, swept up. It was like they were never there.
Click on GalaxyConcreteCoatings.com now. That's Galaxy Concrete Coatings. And remember to like us on Facebook. Galaxy Concrete Coatings. We're out of this world.
I would recommend Galaxy over any other competitor, hands down. You're going to be taken care of and you're going to be satisfied. These guys know what they're doing.
We need each other because every someone needs someone else.
We need each other because when we work together, we can do so much more.
We connect more children with what they need to grow up healthy, educated, and safe. And that's what Child Fund is all about.
Because when you make someone's world better, you make everyone's world better.
Child Fund, because we need each other.
Learn more at childfund.org. That's childfund.org.
At Puccini's, we think less screen time and more quality mealtime is the better way. Eat, talk, and dine with less blue light glaring or talking heads blaring while enjoying great food at a reasonable price is the Puccini's way. Dine in for hot, delicious food prepared fresh and to your liking. If you need anything, we're right there so you'll leave full and happy. We have delivery options and carryout, but let's start dining in together again the way we all used to enjoy so much.
Puccini's Pizza, Pasta, Puccini's.
Sometimes an identity threat is a ring of professional hackers. And sometimes it's an overworked accountant who forgot to encrypt their connection while sending bank details.
I need a coffee.
And you need LifeLock because your info is in endless places. It only takes one mistake to expose you to identity theft. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Terms apply.
Mother's Day's almost here. Sundown Gardens is fully stocked with high-quality annuals, trees, shrubs, decor, and more. 186th Street and Spring Mill Road, sundownGardens.com.
There are screening tests to catch cancer early. Visit cancer.org/getscreened.
Now you've got a gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC. I tell you, we've had some folks who have been on hold for quite a while. Let's go to the phone lines. And Annie, I think it's welcome back, Annie, isn't it?
Yeah, hi, Guy.
Hi there.
I have a story. I'll make it quick, and then a question for you.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of a sadly funny story. It's a ludicrous story about why you should never quote brandish a gun unless you're intending to use it.
Wow.
I have a friend that's one of us crazy little Southern women, I call us. And her husband had an affair. He told her it was over, promised her it was over. She believed him. They were going to start over again. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my phone's making some noises. I think someone's trying to call in. Anyway, they lived out in the county. He worked in a small town, and she was a homemaker, so she wasn't in town very often. And she kept wondering, is he playing me for a fool, or was he sincere? One Friday night, he started going out with the boys drinking, which he'd never done before on Friday nights. She wasn't quite sure what to think of that. It was a new trait. So one Friday night, when their daughter was spending the night with another family, she got his .357, which he had taught her how to shoot. Beware, guys. Don't teach us crazy little Southern women how to shoot and then cheat on us. But so she put it under her pickup truck. She knew where the girlfriend lived and decided she was just going to drive around the block there. So, mind you, though, she had the .357. And on the way in, she was thinking she was just going to pull it on them to scare them. And then, this is where gun training comes in. Her husband had taught her decades ago. He taught her such good gun safety, it could have saved his life had he been there. She started thinking, well, I'm not going to shoot them. That'll ruin all of our lives. My daughters, that'll ruin all of us. But I'm just going to pull on them, scare them. And then what her husband had taught her, the words started coming back to her. He taught her decades earlier, basic gun safety. You never pull a weapon unless you intend to use it. And he told her, because when you're looking down the barrel of a gun that someone has pointed at you, you don't know how crazy they are. You don't know what they have in mind. You have no time to reason. Are they just pretending? Are they bluffing or what? He says instantly you start thinking, I am fighting for my life. And you start reacting. It's a gut reaction, he said. It's just instinct. And she thought, uh-oh, I better not pull the gun on him if he is there, because he might fight me for it. It might go off and shoot one of us, and it would ruin all of our lives. And she said, nope, if his truck is there, I'm going to leave the .357 under the seat of my truck, but I'm going to go knock on the door and confront them. So when she got there, his truck luckily was not parked at the girlfriend's house in town. So she said, well, maybe he's parked around the block. He's too smart to park in front of her house. So she drove around all around that area, did not see his truck. Then she breathed a sigh of relief, and she drove home and waited till he came back from his night out with the boys and never told him what had gone down, put his .357 back where he kept it.
Yeah. Well, Annie, one thing I will agree with you on, Annie, is I've represented way too many people that pull a gun because they think they can intimidate someone or bluff someone or win an argument. And if deadly force is not justified and you pull a gun and point it at someone, then chances are you're going to go to jail. And Annie's point is dead on in the sense that people may not react like you think they're going to react. Not everyone, because they're not necessarily sane and not necessarily sober, and maybe neither one. Not everyone's just going to be petrified by the fact that you've pulled a gun out. Now, some people will, obviously. Some people won't. And what you do a lot of times when people try to bluff people with guns, you're trying to trigger what's called the flight or fight response. And you assume it's going to be flight, right? You assume they're going to be afraid because you've got a gun. But guess what? There are alternatives in the fight or flight response. There are two different options there. One of which is what? Fight. And so Annie's point is correct, which is you can't assume that you're going to get the reaction, which is submission or or fleeing, as in flight, you may in fact trigger a fight response. Now you've got something on your hands you didn't anticipate. So guns are not to bluff. They're not to intimidate. They're not to win an argument. They're not to be a tough guy or a tough girl. They're a tool of last resort when it's your life on the line or some other innocent life. And that's why I agree with that part of Annie's story. And Annie, I may have cut you off a little bit there, but it was kind of a long story, and we're a little past the bottom of the hour. So we need to take a break. We'll be back. We'll go back to the phone lines and shift gears a little bit in terms of our topic here on the Gun Guy Show. Join the discussion, 317-239-9393. That's 317-239-9393. This is Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
This May, you've got a chance to see what an IndyCar driver's dream garage really looks like. WIBC's Tales from the Track, presented by Relay Indiana, takes you inside Graham Rahal Performance, a high-octane hangout where racing meets luxury. Hammer and Nigel sit down with Graham for great stories, laughs, and insights from someone who grew up on the hallowed grounds of the IMS. But this backstage pass to speed, style, and surprises is sold out. The only place to register to win tickets is WIBC.com.
After I got out of the Marine Corps, coming back home, it was just a mental breakdown for me. I was on the verge of giving up. That chapter, that season in my life was over. Now what? Who was I? That's what I kept asking myself. The pressure to have it all together, to heal, to quiet down the monsters inside, it was too much. I lost it. I had heard about the Wounded Warrior Project. I had seen the logo and that visual of a warrior carrying another warrior. The programs that the Wounded Warrior Project offers, it's not just the veteran themselves, it's their whole family. It brings it all together. We have scars that we carry, and just because the scars are there doesn't mean that we're any less than what we were. Right now, I'm the best version that I ever have been of myself. I can embrace the brokenness.
You wouldn't go into battle alone. You don't have to fight this alone. Visit woundedwarriorproject.org/notalone.
The Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council present the story of Tom and Levi.
Tom is the smartest man I know. He's been a professor at 2 major universities, been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, he told me that he was having problems in his classes. I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. And he was telling them that he was doing it as a favor to them, but I think in reality, he just wanted to get out of there. I was really starting to worry because I saw something was wrong.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside me, and my love for him was just immense.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
This hour on 93 WIBC is powered by Sundown Gardens, Hamilton County Spring Nursery headquarters. Fox News area Albany, more than a dozen migrants were arrested this week as part of Operation Tidal Wave, a joint effort of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and Florida law enforcement. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem speaking to Fox News.
Since President Trump has been in office, we have removed thousands and thousands of violent criminals, and people are safer today.
Democrats, however, say many of the president's immigration initiatives exceed his authority. A suspect is in custody accused in a shooting at a college campus in Inglewood, California. Mayor James T. Butts.
We believe it occurred in an office inside the school. We believe that it's a workplace violence-related incident. The suspect, a male Hispanic.
One of the 2 women shot is in critical condition. The other is stable. A motive in the shooting is unclear. America is listening to Fox News.
Premier Deck Coating, the ultimate deck protection. Who are they? Well, they're a sister company of Rhino Shield, and Premier Deck Coating is the product you need if you're tired of applying the same old stain and paint every couple of years to your deck. It's Terry, Stacy, and David and I have a deck that's probably 25 years old. The countless hours and the money that we spend on maintaining that deck never ends. And then we heard about Premier Deck Coating. family owned, based right here in Indy, and they are going to completely transform our deck with their special formulated product, which repels moisture, scratch resistant in virtually any color that we want, and backed by a 10-year guarantee. No more spending time staining or painting every year. Premier Deck Coating will keep our deck looking great for years to come. Premier Deck Coating can also do fences and pergolas too. For a free quote, call 317-696-4071 or visit premierdeckcoating.com.
JMV here from SM's Home and Garden in Bargersville and Sundown Gardens in Westfield. May has arrived and Mother's Day is approaching. Spring flowers are on full display, and you have to see the selection. Miss M's Home and Garden at Sundown Gardens are fully stocked with great annuals, trees, shrubs, decor, and more. Get an early jump on Mother's Day. Sundown Gardens, 186th and Spring Mill Road in Westfield. SundownGardens.com. Miss M's Home and Garden on State Road 135 in Bargersville. MissMsHomeandGarden.com.
Military veterans and active duty service members, you could become a certified cyber warrior with just 12 weeks of training at My Computer Career. Cybersecurity specialists are in high demand, and IT pros with these skills often enjoy abundant opportunity and a great lifestyle. Protect our people, liberty, and treasured institutions from cyber threats. SkillBridge and other VA benefits are available to those who qualify. Learn more at mycomputercareer.edu/CWP. That's mycomputercareer.edu/CWP.
He's a Second Amendment attorney. He's an NRA certified firearms instructor. He's the gun guy. Guy Relford on 93 WIPC.
And welcome back. I'm Guy Relford on the Gun Guy Show. I'll tell you what, we've had Lloyd on hold forever. Lloyd, thanks so much for your patience with us, buddy. And welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
Hey, no problem. Enjoy listening. Two things. First one is, what are the chances of ever having you and maybe one of your cohort attorneys take questions for one or two segments about things about Indiana laws, like that are very old, not related to guns necessarily? And the second one is, please tell me why you're not syndicated nationally.
Well, that's Lloyd.
You too busy?
Well, no, I don't think it's that. And thank you very much for your call, and that's a nice comment or question to make. I've never looked into syndication. I'm coming up on 10 years of having my show in July. Believe it or not, it'll be the 10-year anniversary of the Gun Guy Show. And nobody here at WIBC has talked to me about that. I'm sure, and that's not an excuse. It's probably something that I could pursue on my own. And I've thought about that. The my show tends to be about Indiana and what's going on in the legislature, and I focus a lot on Indiana laws. I certainly do talk about what's going on in Congress and on the national scene. But I would have to change the format a little bit to make it a little less Indiana-centric. And that might take something away from our listeners here. And part of it is it's not necessarily too busy, although I'm busier than I care to be at this old age. And the law practice is a full-time job and then some. But it would be nice. It would be fun. I would like to have more of a national voice on some of these issues, but it would definitely have to change the format of the show a little bit. And I have mixed emotions about that. Because I think a lot of the people that listen kind of like the local perspective and the Indiana focus, particularly when I can get into a deep drill on Indiana laws as they relate to the Indiana gun owner. On the other question about more of taking questions not necessarily gun related, listen, I've had such a focused practice for so long. And really focused on gun laws. I have people, family members or friends or people just stick their head in my office sometime and ask me some question about a lease or a real estate transaction or a will, and I always have to shrug and go, boy, you're talking to the wrong one. So I have a very specific practice, very focused on Second Amendment issues, and when you're that focused, you tend to lose much perspective, and you certainly lose the ability to have kept up with legal developments in a lot of different areas. So I don't see me doing that anytime soon. Let's go back to the phone lines, and Andrew has called. Andrew, welcome to the Gun Guy Show.
how you doing, sir? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I sure can.
Hey, I just wanted your point of view. There's a gentleman by the name of Otho Wallace in Florida, and Florida is stand your ground, correct?
Yeah, that's my understanding. I mean, they got their Florida Stand Your Ground law got a lot of attention during the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman trial, and so I couldn't tell you the specifics, but I understand that they do have a stand your ground provision in their self-defense law.
Okay. Just to get to my point, so we can get to the next caller. There's a gentleman by the name of Otho Wallace. You could go to otho.org to support if anybody would like. That he got put in a situation, and he ended up getting charged with capital murder on law enforcement officer and a slew of other charges. After 2 days of jury deliberations, they found him guilty of the lessest charge, which was a manslaughter charge, which is now being appealed. There was a Senate Bill 1092. Are you familiar with Senate Bill 1092, the Jason Rayner Act?
Here in Indiana?
No, sir. It was in Florida.
Oh, yeah, no, man. I'm sorry. I don't try to keep up with Florida. I've got enough to handle right here in Indiana.
Oh, okay. Well, just to get straight to my question, in that Senate bill, that Florida is a state that has tried a lot of different Senate bills, and then it spreads throughout the country. In that Senate bill, it expressed basically in big bold letters, no matter how wrong, law enforcement is, there will be an enhancement for using a firearm. So my simple question to you, sir, is, when it comes to the difference between a civilian and a civil servant, trying to unlawfully detain somebody, as what happened in Otho Wallace's situation. How do you feel about just them trying to enhance, and I yield with, saying, we're not dealing with the England police that carried batons. Otho Wallace felt his life was in danger. And
and I'll tell you what, Andrew.
I yield there. Thank you.
Oh no, thank you, sir. I appreciate you calling. We're gonna go ahead and take a break. When we come back, I'm going to address the general issue, and I'm not sure if I completely have my head around the factual scenario that Andrew was talking about, but Indiana changed its law rather dramatically when it came to the use of force in self-defense against a police officer. And when you hear that, a lot of people scratch their head and go, hold on. I mean, can you ever use force in self-defense against a police officer? Well, if you've taken my Indiana gun law class, since about, I want to say 2012, 13, maybe 14, right in that area, the Indiana General Assembly very significantly changed the Indiana self-defense statute in a way that allows, under very limited circumstances, a private citizen to actually use force, and in incredibly limited circumstances, as it should be, actually use deadly force in self-defense against a police officer. And after this law was passed, and I'm going to go into it after the break, and I hadn't planned on going into this, but given Andrew's question, I think I will. There were police blogs and forums out there that said, Indiana just justified the use of force against cops. And in a very limited circumstance, they actually did. And what does that law say, and what does it mean? That's what I'll go into when we come back. This is Guy Relford on The Gun Guy Show on 93 WIBC.
Life moves fast.
Another new directive from Donald Trump.
President Trump will not be deterred to make our federal government more efficient.
So does the news.
We expect those meetings to take place very soon.
Decisions made today.
I'm not a big fan of the Atlantic.
No threats to national security.
Could impact you tomorrow.
Accountability and transparency.
What's next?
You never know what's going to happen.
Need to know what happened.
We're already tracking it. Stay in the know while you're on the go on 93 WIBC.
Guy Relford for Tactical Firearms Training. As I always say, our Essentials of Indiana Gun Law class is our most popular class, and we've got one coming up on Saturday, May 10th, a week from today, 9 a.m. to 1:30 to 2 o'clock p.m. It's 4.5 to 5 hours of the most important legal information you need as an Indiana gun owner. Check it out at tactical-firearms.com. You can sign up right online. Again, it's $50 for an individual, $95 for couples. We'd love to see you there coming up a week from today, May 10th at Indy Arms. Tactical-firearms.com. Just click on upcoming courses at tactical-firearms.com.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed. Oh, yeah? Yeah, he's starting with the woots. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Comcast Business helps turn today's small businesses into engines of modern business. It's how restaurants become reliably up and running neighborhood favorites. How retailers become seamlessly restocking, cyber-securing, must-visit shops. And how healthcare offices become the data managing caregivers that we all depend on. With reliable connectivity, enhanced cybersecurity, advanced fiber solutions, and Wi-Fi backup, Comcast Business is powering the engine of modern business. Powering possibilities.
Now through May 4th, new customers can get started with 300 megabit internet and Security Edge for $69 a month for 24 months. And ask how to get free installation on qualifying bundles. Plus, find out how to get a $500 prepaid card on a qualifying gig bundle. Call today. Restrictions apply. Not available in all areas. Requires enrollment in paperless billing and automatic payments with bank account. Equipment, taxes, and other fees extra. After 24 months, regular rates apply.
Hello, my name is Nate Clancy. I'm with Labor's Local 120. I've been with Labor's Local 120 for over 40 years now.
For members of Labor's International Union of North America, giving back is part of their commitment to the Indy community, like helping the Soapbox Derby.
We painted the bridge. The Wilbershaw Bridge is an iconic bridge for the Soapbox Derby. It's been there forever. It was, needing work.
When Indy or surrounding communities need help, LIUNA steps up.
Members that went over there, we seen that it was needing work, power washed, done the painting, just anything that was needed, and it looks amazing now.
This is Chris Brickey, business manager of Labor's Local 120. While all our members are skilled, highly trained men and women, we are also your friends, neighbors, Little League coaches, and volunteers here in Indy.
Here at the local, I like volunteering in the community. Just every little bit helps. I really got a real joy in doing that.
We build Indy for good jobs and stronger communities. We are LIUNA Local 120.
Big Joe here for your trusted local independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer, B&W HVAC Plumbing and Electrical.
With a B&W Premier Club membership, you'll stay ahead of breakdowns and costly repairs. Our members get routine maintenance, priority scheduling, and exclusive discounts, saving you money and keeping your family comfortable all season long. Visit bplusw.com or call 317-214-0108 for more information.
B&W HVAC Plumbing and Electrical, your American Standard dealer since 1961.
Tired of digging through noise to find real news? Go straight to WIBC.com. Local stories, statewide impact, national headlines, info that matters. When news breaks, WIBC.com is already on it. Stay on the know while you're on the go. Second to none on the Second Amendment. This is The Gun Guy with Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
And welcome back for our last segment here on tonight's Gun Guy Show. And so in answer to Andrew's question, it's really interesting because Indiana changed its law in this area here a few years ago. And it was after a case that went up to the Supreme Court of Indiana. And it was called Barnes versus State. And I talk about this in my gun law class, the reason it's top of mind. But in Barnes versus State, there was a 911 call that was made by Mrs. Barnes, and it was interrupted in the middle of her call, and she had been having some form of conflict with her husband, and she called 911, and the phone was apparently taken away from her, or something caused the interruption of that call. And so police officers responded because they were able to get the address. And so they went to the address, and Mr. Barnes was out in front of the house. And they said, "Hey, what's going on?" He said, "Oh, we were just having an argument. It's fine." she's fine, I'm fine, y'all can just head on down the road, have a nice night. And the officer said, no, we need to talk to Mrs. Barnes and make sure she's okay. And he said, well, you're not going to my house without a warrant. And they said, well, no, this is exigent circumstances, which means if they have a reasonable belief that someone in a residence is in immediate need of assistance, then that's an exception to the requirement for a warrant. It's a little more complicated than that, but that's the gist. So he said, we're going to go in and check on your wife. He said, well, no, you're not without a warrant. Well, he went on ahead of them and was in the house. The officer tried to come in behind him, and Mr. Barnes put his hands on the police officer and shoved him back out. And he then went to jail for battery on a police officer. And he said, hold on, under the Castle Doctrine, I was defending my home against an illegal entry. And the Castle Doctrine in Indiana says, yes, you can use reasonable force, even including deadly force, to prevent an unlawful entry or attack on your dwelling, which is your home. And he said this was an unlawful entry because they didn't have a warrant. So they were illegally entering my home, and the Castle Doctrine says I can do that. And went all the way up to the Indiana Supreme Court, and the Indiana Supreme Court said, well, we're not going to talk about the Castle Doctrine because we don't think it applies to police officers. And they didn't really explain why that was. There's nothing in the statute that says it doesn't. But they said, we're going to create a new rule of law in Indiana, which is that you can't use force against a police officer, even if they're entering your home unlawfully. So even if an officer is acting unlawfully, you can't use force against a police officer because we want less violence against police officers. And that sentiment, I want less violence against police officers too, but a lot of people got very upset. And in fact, I didn't like that ruling because hold on, if it's an unlawful entry, then why is that an exception to the Castle Doctrine? Now, I have no desire to hurt any police officers, but it was inconsistent with how the statute was written. But the Supreme Court said, hey, if the legislature doesn't like this, they can change the self-defense statute. Well, guess what the legislature did the very next session? They came back and said, yeah, in some select set of circumstances, you can use reasonable force against a police officer, for instance, to prevent an unlawful entry into your home. You have to believe that they're not acting within their official duties or otherwise acting unlawfully. And there are a bunch of exceptions I don't have time to go into, like if you're committing a crime or escaping after a criminal act or you were the initial aggressor, etc. But under general circumstances, you can use reasonable force to prevent unlawful entry into your home. You can use reasonable force to prevent the officer from hurting you or a third person, if they're acting unlawfully or outside their official duties. And some other circumstances. And I can go more into this on another occasion, but Indiana actually justified the use of force against a police officer in select circumstances. Now, that's not a recommendation to do so. It's not going to end well. But check out the statute. It's 35-41-3-2, and you can read all of that on your own. That's it for this week's Gun Guy Show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you come back. Guy Relford on 93 WIBC.
You love spring in Indy, but you hate to paint, so do what you